So the saying we always go to is just because there's money behind the team doesn't mean it's smart money necessarily. So a lot of these books, and once you get like toward game day, right? Yeah, any average Joe can just walk in with $1 million in a suitcase if he's got the money, make a huge bet on Washington State, Oregon State, over, under, whoever. It's not going to move the line. If it's a professional and they know that they're very, very respected, they consistently beat the market, have a winning record, and the books see that and they go, all right, we really have to respect this position. We're going to shift the odds a couple points and try to get out in front of that move. That's really more, it's not like the amount necessarily, but it's who is behind that.
Well, welcome back to the Nick and Nigel Show. I don't even know, Coach, what week we are on, but I do know that we are brought to you by our friends at Cloudfilters Pub at 1501 Northwest Monroe Avenue in Corvallis, a place to watch the game before and after, and our friends at MDI Management for exceptional apartment luxury living in the Mid-Willamette Valley. Coach, how you doing out there in the Mid-Willamette Valley?
Good morning, Nigel P. Love Nigel P. What a great way to start my morning. First of all, you people that don't get to be around Nigel P., you're missing out. Now, what you do on the introduction, Nigel, great props. I don't know how you do that, but you've gotten better and better every week. It doesn't matter what happens after this. You've already knocked it out the park.
We're done. Hey, we did the sponsor read, our friends at MDI, at Cloudfilters Pub. I don't even know why you don't even stick around. Hey, look, I know why you want to stick around, because you want to try to figure out what the heck happened this weekend. Dreams were dashed. Hopes were not fulfilled. Wazoo and Oregon State both lose before their big matchup this weekend down in Corvallis. Coach, our guy John Mateer was still on fire, still doing his thing. I believe he's responsible now in the last 5 games for 18, count them, 18 touchdowns, running and throwing. You know how many interceptions he's thrown over that period of time? Donut. Not 0, not a 1. So my man was on fire still. I mean, at one point, it looked like the Cougs were going to bury New Mexico before the game even began. They just bop down the field. They're up 21-7, get the ball back. And then the wheels kind of fell off for a second. When you were watching the game, in your mind, what happened?
Well, first of all, John Mateer has been the subject since week 1. You know what? In 10 games, Nigel, he's accounted for 5 touchdowns in 5 of them. That's 25 touchdowns, right? In half of his games, he's accounted for 5 touchdowns. I don't know how many he has for the year so far, but this guy's got a chance to throw for 3,000 yards and possibly rush for 1,000 yards. I don't know how many times that's happened, but this guy, anyway, what happened?
Well,
appeared to me like Washington State at some point close to the end of the first half thought the thing was in the bag. And I've been around teams, not very many. It's happened once in a while. When you shut her down, if in fact that was the case and it appeared that way, it's hard to get it back, because they didn't score another touchdown until about 4 minutes left in the game.
No. Yeah, which was wild when you consider how fast they started. And look, to me, there was a second down on that 4th drive. They had scored 3 straight touchdowns. I mean, they're just mowing down the field. New Mexico has no answers for anything. And Chris Hudson is really wide open on a deep over route that would have got them probably on the edge of field goal range. And Mateer missed it, just flat missed him. I mean, there's no pressure. He wasn't escaping anything. Chris Hudson's wide open. And all of a sudden, it was like everything changed, right? All of a sudden, the guy who started the game 11 for 11, all of a sudden, and what I noticed as a guy who, I know this is weird, but I used to coach quarterbacks. For about 2 weeks, I coached quarterbacks. And the one thing that I saw was he started dropping his elbow and really kind of sidearming everything, which is, great when it's your change up for when a defensive lineman's in your face or there's no lanes to throw the ball. But all of a sudden he started doing it when he was just freshly in the pocket. And it was and the pocket was solid. And all of a sudden, you started to notice the ball started to flip. It was another third down where he had to back out to the flat. I don't know why I'm spacing my man's name, Pelosi. And again, he dropped his elbow and the ball floated out of bounds. And so, those are the things that I saw. And then again, the Cougs continue to struggle in the third quarter. I remember talking to their offensive coordinator about, hey, what's going on in the third quarter? And he's like, look, in 3 of our games, we actually scored on the first play of the fourth quarter. But still, when you're talking about an offense that's that explosive, it's kind of been mind-boggling to see the third quarter struggles. But speaking of struggles, our boys at Oregon State, man, cannot seem to get off the schneid right now. It's go down to Air Force and get blanked 28-0. Obviously, we know the story of this team. I mean, it's been injuries. Bengo Branson, who really gave them a passing game that came alive, somehow got hurt and didn't even make the trip. It was one of those kind of right before the start of the game, we found out that Javani McCoy was going to get the start. Kind of had a back and forth with him and Johnson at quarterback. Johnson ends up finishing the game. But Coach, how do you explain anything with the Beavs?
Well, Nigel, you're a good football coach, and I'm sure those quarterbacks got a lot in 2 weeks from night. You could coach anything, but here's the deal. Stopping the option, dive, quarterback, pitch, in that order, and everybody has an assignment. Well, the Beavs couldn't stop the dive, so therefore, that was a long day at the office. Air Force is truly built on ball control and running the ball, a lot like Oregon State, but they really are built on controlling the ball. And when you can't stop the dive, when you're playing a triple option team, you can't stop anything. So it was a tough day for them defensively. Now, they have had injuries. And I want everybody to understand that does listen to this. I'm sure the 1 million or 2 million that listen to this every week. Nigel and I are for Oregon State and Washington State, but we also want to keep it real. They've had injuries. Branson not being there hurts their passing attack. But they could not generate anything on offense against an Air Force team that I will say, without a doubt, Oregon State should and probably does have better talent than Air Force. So this was a bad loss.
Yeah, no, it was really strange to watch because they couldn't establish a run game. Defensively, their defensive tackle goes out in the first play of the game. And the thing that was really wild was when they did look like they were going to get stops, they put Air Force in several 3rd and longs, which really is a death certificate for that offense. They were able to convert on big plays. I mean, tight end making one-handed catches, diving deep balls, getting 36 yards on third and 9s when really the defense should be anticipating pass. Air Force's offense was making plays, whereas Oregon State's offense was not. Real quick before we get to our guests in the second segment, if you're Oregon State and you've now watched a team in New Mexico that has some success, what's your recipe to try to come out of this thing with a big upset?
Well, as we saw, New Mexico with quarterback runs ran all over the place against Washington State. So maybe this is the week that you don't play Branson. Maybe you play those other quarterbacks, McCoy and Jabari Johnson, and you run the ball with your quarterback. Also, Hankerson, and your quarterback, because you saw firsthand. Now, that guy's pretty dynamic for New Mexico, Dan Pierre, pretty dynamic. But you saw firsthand that quarterback runs were really a problem for WSU.
No, I'll tell you what, Coach, you're absolutely right. And then I think defensively, for Oregon State, I think you saw John Mateer struggle in the second half. If you notice, it was a 3-man rush, 8 droppers. So they had a 5 under, 3 deep, not a whole lot of holes in that. They should have been able to hit the seams, hit it once or twice, but he just kind of hung on to the ball and some things. Now you're inviting Washington State to run the ball against you. So you kind of like, listen, all you linebackers are going to go 3-man front. We're going to drop 8, but all you on red alert because we're saying run the ball to try to shorten this game, try to get them to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. They want to be able to sling the ball around the yard. So again, I think that might be a recipe to try to slow John Mateer down because that's what worked for New Mexico. and maybe it'll work for the Beavs this weekend. Now, listen, I don't know what's going to happen in this game, Coach. I'm not a betting man, but our guest Ben Wilson is. He's coming up next on the next segment. Nick and Nigel coming back at you. Well, welcome back to the Nick and Nigel Show. I know you guys found us somehow, but just in case you want to send it to your friends, you can always find us on the Pac-12 Insider, which is available on Samsung TV Plus, channel 2392, as well as Amazon platforms, including Amazon Prime Video app, the Freevee on smart TVs and streaming devices. And you can always watch Nick and Nigel on the Pac-12's YouTube page. So don't forget all that stuff. We got to introduce our betting guru, our betting analyst. Ben Wilson joins us on the Nick and Nigel Show from Las Vegas, Nevada, the gambling mecca of the world. Ben, welcome to the Nick and Nigel Show, man. Glad to have you.
Hey, gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm pumped to be here. I could tell just the excitement from segment one. I mean, it's Pac-12 week. You guys are fired up. I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
First of all, we're talking college ball. You're talking to two college football junkies. Like, if anybody calls us from about 8 in the morning on Saturday till 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, forget about it. We're not getting back to you. Don't text us. Don't call. Matter of fact, if you call during that time, we ain't friends. Like, we're not friends anymore after that. So we are junkies, like, just to the T. Now, that said, I've never been a gambling guy. Like, I'm a guy who, when I go to Vegas, I go to bed early. I'm boring. Now, I might hit the blackjack tables. I'm good with that because I can count numbers. I got all that stuff. Actually, I probably shouldn't have said that out loud because now I'm banned. But explain to me how the line works, because we all know that this weekend Oregon State is the dog. But, like, how does the line work? How does it move? How do betting analysts, how does Vegas even know the odds of these type of games?
That's a great question. First off, don't worry. They're not going to ban you, Nigel. They will welcome you to walk through those felt casino floors. I can guarantee you that, okay? Your cover's not been blown, at least not yet. For the way that, at least the college football season, guys, it's a pretty set process now. The pattern is pretty much repeated every single week, where Sunday morning, about 11 a.m., what really happens is you got one or two major sports books that are kind of known as the originators, right? So they're the ones who set the first line. What they do at that point, they want to know from the professionals, who are really the only people betting at that sort of time in the week. Everybody else, they're on their couch watching NFL, but their guy is locked and loaded. They're ready. They've got their numbers, what they think the line should be. So what these sportsbooks do is they post a number at a very low limit. Like, you might only be able to get $500, $1,000 down on these games when they post them, but they want people to bet into that. They want to use that information to figure out, all right, how far are we off? Where do we need to adjust? And as a result, you can often tell as a bettor where that early smart money is at. Because later in the week, once we get into Thursday, Friday, and then game day especially, the limits continue to rise. So by Thursday, you can bet $10,000 aside. Once we get to Friday, Nigel, Nick can roll, and you can get $100,000 down on a game as the high rollers come into focus. But what is really important to remember is the early move often is the most telling, because that's when professionals are betting. So the saying we always go to is, just because there's money behind the team doesn't mean it's smart money necessarily. So a lot of these books, and once you get like toward game day, right? Yeah, any average Joe can just walk in with $1 million in a suitcase if he's got the money, make a huge bet on Washington State, Oregon State, over, under, whoever. It's not going to move the line. Whereas a professional who is respected, right? These accounts are all tied. The casinos know who's betting. If it's a professional and they know that they're very, very respected, they consistently beat the market, have a winning record, and he might only bet $500, and that's what happened. You go back to Sunday. It might be a small bet, and the books see that, and they go, all right, we really have to respect this position. We're going to shift the odds a couple points and try to get out in front of that move. That's really more. It's not like the amount necessarily, but it's who is behind that.
Well, Ben, I would absolutely bring Coach out to Vegas. I know we joke that I'm banned after my comment, but Nick is legitimately banned from Vegas. It's a long story. We'll tell you next week when we join us again on Nick and Nigel.